Sachsenhausen concentration camp, Germany. October 23, 1942. 6:47 a.m. Captain Joseph Houghton stands against a gray concrete wall, his hands cuffed behind his back. 12 German rifles point at his chest. 7 British commandos stand beside him, all in uniform, all prisoners of war protected by international law. But the SS officer reading from a classified folder isn't talking about prison camps or the Geneva Convention. He's reading an execution order signed by Adolf Hitler himself. Order number 003830/42. A secret so illegal that only 12 copies exist in the entire German military. Houghton's crime? He destroyed a power station in Norway 3 weeks ago. He fought in uniform. He surrendered honorably. He followed every rule of war. And now Germany is about to murder him for it. What Houghton doesn't know, what won't be discovered until the Nuremberg trials years later, is that his execution will help hang the men who ordered it. This is the story of Hitler's Commando Order, the most infamous illegal command of World War II. It's the story of how one mission in the frozen mountains of Norway triggered a secret directive that murdered dozens of Allied soldiers, destroyed the careers of German officers who obeyed it, and created legal precedent that still governs warfare today. By the end of this video, you'll understand why breaking the rules of war doesn't just make you a criminal. It makes you lose the war itself. Before he became prisoner number 4729 at Sachsenhausen, Joseph Houghton was an ordinary man living an ordinary life in Leeds, England. He worked as a civil engineer, designing bridges and calculating load-bearing weights. His life was numbers, blueprints, and the quiet satisfaction of building things that would last. He married his childhood sweetheart, Margaret, in 1938. She made him promise to stay safe, to avoid unnecessary risks, to come home when the war was over. He promised. He meant it. But when Britain formed its commando units in 1940, elite soldiers trained for raids behind enemy lines, Houghton saw an opportunity to end the war faster. To save lives by taking calculated risks. To use his engineering mind to destroy German infrastructure. So he volunteered, breaking his promise to Margaret but keeping what he believed was a higher promise to his country. Did he make the right choice? Margaret received his letters every week. Short, censored notes that told her nothing about where he was or what he was doing. Just reassurances that he was safe, that he loved her, that he'd be home soon. She wrote back longer letters, full of news from home, stories about their neighbors, hopes for the future. Houghton kept her latest letter folded in his breast pocket, unopened. He was saving it. A reward for after the mission. Something to look forward to. Something to remind him what he was fighting for. He didn't know he'd never read it. September 1942. Combined Operations Headquarters, Scotland. Houghton sits in a wooden chair in a briefing room that smells of cigarette smoke and strong tea. 28 men surround him, all volunteers for something dangerous. The commanding officer spreads a map of Norway across the table. His finger taps a location in the north, Glomfjord. A power station producing aluminum for German aircraft. The target. The mission, called Operation Musketon, is simple in concept, brutal in execution. Travel by submarine to Norway. Land at night in rubber dinghies. March 15 miles through enemy-occupied mountains. Destroy the generators with explosive charges. Escape 200 miles on foot to neutral Sweden. The commanding officer makes it clear, this is voluntary. Anyone can leave, no shame, no questions. Nobody moves. What drives men to volunteer for missions like this? The training is relentless. Navigation in darkness. Weapons drills. Explosives handling. Physical conditioning that breaks weaker men. Houghton learns to move silently through forests, to read terrain by starlight, to plant charges that will detonate with mathematical precision. His engineering background gives him an edge. He understands structural weaknesses, blast radii, the exact placement needed to bring down a generator. His commander, Captain Graham Black, notices this. Trusts him. Makes him second in command. A dozen men will depend on Houghton's calculations, his leadership, his ability to stay calm when everything goes wrong. And things will go wrong. On September 11, 1942, 12 men board HMS Junon, a British submarine waiting in the harbor. Houghton carries his rifle, his explosives, his supplies, and Margaret's unread letter. The submarine dives. Darkness closes over the hull. For 3 days they travel underwater, cramped, uncomfortable, breathing recycled air. Houghton tries to sleep but can't. His mind runs through the mission again and again. What could go wrong? German patrols. Bad weather. Equipment failure. Capture. But international law protects prisoners of war. The Geneva Convention guarantees humane treatment. If they're captured, they'll sit out the war in a POW camp. Uncomfortable but alive. Safe. That's what he tells himself. That's what he believes. He has no idea that Adolf Hitler is about to change the rules. September 15, 1942, 9:47 p.m. The submarine surfaces in a Norwegian fjord. Stars scatter across a clear sky. The water is black and cold. Houghton climbs into a rubber dinghy with 5 other men, begins paddling toward shore. The only sounds are gentle waves and his own harsh breathing. His shoulders burn from the effort. His hands are already numb from cold. But he keeps paddling. They all keep paddling. Because 20 miles inland, German generators are producing aluminum for Luftwaffe aircraft that will bomb London tomorrow, next week, next month. Every hour those generators run, more British civilians die. This is simple math. Destroy the generators, save lives. Worth the risk, isn't it? They reach shore, hide the dinghies, begin climbing into the mountains. The terrain is brutal. Steep slopes that require hands and feet. Narrow ridges where one misstep means a fatal fall into darkness. They climb through the night, rest during the day in hidden positions, climb again the next night. Houghton's feet blister. His legs burn. His lungs ache from the thin mountain air. But he pushes forward because the other men are watching, because leadership means never showing weakness, because complaining achieves nothing. On the second night, they reach their observation point overlooking the Glomfjord power station. Lights illuminate the facility like a beacon. Smoke rises from chimneys. The low hum of massive generators vibrates through the ground. So close now. One more night. One more approach. Then the real work begins. September 16th, after dark. The assault team moves toward the power station. Houghton is part of the 7-man team that will enter the facility. Captain Black leads them through shadows, avoiding guards, moving from cover to cover with practiced silence. German security is surprisingly lax. Perhaps they don't believe British commandos would strike this deep into Norway. Perhaps they've grown complacent. Perhaps they're just unlucky. The team reaches the machinery hall. 2 massive generators spin with hypnotic rhythm. This is the moment Houghton has trained for. He begins placing explosive charges, his hands steady despite the adrenaline, his engineering mind calculating exactly where to place each block of plastic explosive for maximum structural damage. The charges are molded against turbine housings. Detonators are carefully inserted. Fuses are set for 10 minutes. Enough time to escape. Not enough time for Germans to defuse them. Perfect. Or it would be perfect if a German guard hadn't just walked around the corner. The guard sees them. Opens his mouth to shout. One of the Norwegian corporals reacts instantly, kills him silently with a knife. But another guard saw it happen. He runs down the access tunnel, screaming alarm. Captain Black makes the decision instantly. Smoke grenades. Block the tunnel. Grenades detonate. Thick white smoke fills the corridor. It buys them seconds, maybe a minute. Fuses lit. Everyone out. They run. Back through the facility. German soldiers are responding now, shouting, organizing. The commandos burst out into the Norwegian night. Behind them, the charges detonate. A massive explosion lights up the sky. Sound rolls across the mountains like thunder. Both generators destroyed. Mission complete. But survival? That's just beginning. The plan always called for the 12 men to split into 2 groups after the raid. Harder to track. Better odds that someone reaches Sweden. Captain Black leads one group. Houghton leads the other. They separate in the darkness, moving in different directions, both heading east toward Sweden 200 miles away. Houghton's group includes Private Richard Makeham, a 20-year-old from Manchester whose brother died at Dunkirk. Sergeant James Smith, a career soldier with 15 years' experience. Corporal Jan Granlund, a Norwegian who knows these mountains. And 3 others, all exhausted, all determined, all believing they can make it. For 3 days they move at night, hide during the day, eat cold rations, drink from mountain streams. They navigate by compass and stars. They see German patrols in the valleys below, searching, hunting. But the mountains are vast. The forests are thick. They're careful. They're professional. They're almost going to make it. September 21st, 1942. Near the Swedish border. So close now. Maybe 30 miles. 2 more days of hard marching. Houghton can almost taste freedom. Can almost imagine the debriefing in Britain, the hot meal, the clean bed, the letter from Margaret he'll finally read. They're crossing an open field in early morning, moving fast, when the burst of machine gun fire erupts from the tree line. Bullets kick up dirt around their boots. Houghton dives for cover, returns fire with his rifle. His training takes over. Find cover. Identify the threat. Suppress with accurate fire. But more German soldiers are arriving. Too many. Dozens of them. His group is outnumbered 10-1. Private Mayhem goes down, shot through the leg. Granlund tries to drag him to cover. More machine gun fire. This isn't a battle they can win. Houghton sees the mathematics clearly. 4 exhausted men with light weapons against 40 fresh soldiers with machine guns and grenades. The equation has only one solution. Surrender, he shouts. Raises his hands. The alternative is death in this field. The Germans approach cautiously, rifles raised, fingers on triggers. But they don't shoot. They take Houghton and his men prisoner. Strip them of weapons. Bind their hands with rope. March them away. Houghton feels relief mixed with disappointment. Relief because they're alive. Disappointment because they failed to escape. But it's not so bad, he tells himself. They'll be interrogated. Then sent to a prisoner of war camp. The Geneva Convention guarantees it. They wore uniforms. They fought honorably. They followed every rule. The war is over for them, but they'll survive. They'll go home when Germany loses. Because Germany will lose. Houghton is certain of that. He just needs to wait it out. Stay strong. Survive. But what he doesn't know, what he can't possibly know, is that Hitler has decided men like him don't deserve to survive. While Houghton and his men are being captured in Norway, Adolf Hitler is having a screaming fit in his headquarters at the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia. It's October 7, 1942. The conference table is covered with reports, each one detailing another humiliating British commando raid. Operation Colossus against Italy. Operation Biting in France. Operation Chariot against the dry dock at St. Nazaire. And now Operation Musketon in Norway. Hitler's face is flushed red. His hands shake with rage. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel and General Alfred Jodl, the 2 most senior officers in the German military, stand nearby, saying nothing because contradicting the Führer when he's like this can be fatal. These commandos, Hitler shouts. They strike everywhere. Like criminals. Like terrorists. And we treat them like gentlemen. We put them in comfortable prison camps. We follow the Geneva Convention while they break every rule. This is a lie, and some of the generals in the room know it. Most Allied commandos wear proper uniforms. They follow international law. But Hitler doesn't care about truth. He cares about power. About control. About crushing any sign that Germany is vulnerable. General Jodl tries to inject reason. Mein Führer, if we execute uniformed prisoners, the Allies will retaliate against German POWs. Hitler waves this away like swatting a fly. The weak British? They don't have the stomach for it. And here's the terrible thing. Hitler is partially right. When the executions eventually become known, Britain will protest but won't execute German prisoners in revenge. They'll maintain the moral high ground even as their men die. But that doesn't make Hitler's decision legal. Or moral. Or anything other than a war crime. I want an order drafted, Hitler commands. All commandos captured anywhere are to be executed immediately. No trials. No delays. I don't care if they're in uniform. They are to be killed. Silence fills the room. This is unprecedented. A direct violation of international law that has governed warfare for generations. But nobody objects. Nobody speaks. Because objecting to Hitler in 1942 is suicide. October 18, 1942. The order is officially issued. Only 12 copies are printed. Each marked top secret. Each distributed by hand to commanding generals with instructions that it must never be written down at lower levels, never allowed to fall into enemy hands. The order is numbered 003830/42. Later, at Nuremberg, it will be called Exhibit PS 498. But right now it's just words on paper. Words that say, all enemies on so-called commando missions in Europe or Africa, even if they are to all appearances soldiers in uniform, whether armed or unarmed, in battle or in flight, are to be slaughtered to the last man. Not captured. Not imprisoned. Slaughtered. The order continues, if individual members of such commandos fall into the hands of military forces, they are to be handed over immediately to the SD. The SD is the security service. The secret police. The executioners. The order makes clear, Any imprisonment under military guard in PW stockades is strictly prohibited. There will be no prison camps. No Geneva Convention. No mercy. Just death. How does a civilized nation issue an order like this? The order reaches Norway just as Houghton and his men arrive at a German military installation for interrogation. The German officers questioning them are professionals. They're curious about British commando training, about the methods used in the raid, about how 12 men destroyed a power station that was supposed to be secure. But they're also uncomfortable. Because sitting on their commander's desk is a copy of Hitler's order. And these British soldiers in front of them, tired and hungry but calm and polite, are about to be murdered. Some of the German officers object privately. They know this is wrong. They know it violates every principle of military honor they were taught. But objecting loudly means court-martial. Means disgrace. Maybe death. So they stay silent. They follow orders. And Joseph Houghton, who followed every rule, who wore his uniform, who surrendered honorably, is loaded onto a train heading to Germany. To Sachsenhausen concentration camp. To the wall we saw at the beginning of this story. October 23, 1942. 6 surviving members of Operation Musketon stand in a courtyard at Sachsenhausen. 1 man died of wounds during capture. Captain Black and his group escaped to Sweden. But Houghton and 5 others are here in Germany about to die. The morning is cold. Their breath forms clouds in the freezing air. Houghton's hands are cuffed behind his back. The metal bites into his wrists. An SS officer approaches carrying a folder. He opens it. Begins reading. By direct command of the Führer, all commandos captured are to be executed immediately. Houghton's mind goes numb. This can't be happening. They're prisoners of war. The Geneva Convention protects them. They wore uniforms. They followed the rules. But the rules have changed. Hitler changed them. And Hitler doesn't care about international law. 12 German soldiers stand in a line, rifles raised. They're not SS. They're regular Wehrmacht. Conscripts probably. Men who joined the army to serve their country, not to murder prisoners. Some of them look sick. But they'll shoot. Because disobeying orders in the German military is unthinkable. Houghton thinks about Margaret. About the letter in his pocket he never read. About the promise he made to come home. He's breaking that promise. Not by choice. But it's broken all the same. He thinks about the mission. The explosion. The destroyed generators. The aluminum that won't be produced. The aircraft that won't be built. Was it worth it? He decides yes. Even here, even now, even facing execution, he decides it was worth it. Because some things matter more than one life. Some things matter more than coming home. Private Mayhem stands beside him, the boy from Manchester who wanted to avenge his brother. Now he's joining his brother. 20 years old. A life unlived. Sergeant Smith stands on the other side thinking about the mission, about the sound of the explosion, about doing his duty to the last moment. These are good men. Brave men. Men who deserve better than this. Ready? The command echoes off concrete walls. 12 rifles point at 6 hearts. Houghton closes his eyes. Then opens them. If he's going to die, he'll die looking at his executioners. He'll make them see him. Make them remember. Make them carry this for the rest of their lives. Aim. Time seems to slow. His mind flashes backward. Not to the war. Not to the mission. To earlier. To Margaret in her white dress on their wedding day. To the engineering firm where he used to work. To ordinary life, ordinary happiness, ordinary dreams of growing old together. All of it gone now. Erased by Hitler's signature on a secret order. Fire. 12 rifles discharge simultaneously. The sound is enormous. Smoke fills the courtyard. And Joseph Houghton, who kept his promise to his country but broke his promise to his wife, falls. Guards carry the bodies away. Blood is hosed off the wall. By noon, no evidence remains. The SS officer files his report. Prisoners executed under Führer Order 003830/42. Bodies cremated. Case closed. But the crime isn't closed. It's just beginning to metastasize through the German military like a cancer. Because the Commando Order isn't a one-time thing. It's standing policy. Over the following months, more commandos are captured. More are executed. In December 1942, 10 Royal Marines conduct Operation Frankton, paddling kayaks into Bordeaux harbor to sink German ships. They succeed brilliantly. But 8 are captured. 6 are executed under Hitler's order. Their bodies are found after the war in unmarked graves. In March 1944, 15 American OSS operatives land in Italy. All captured. All executed. Their commander, General Anton Dossler, will later claim he was just following orders. It won't save him. Meanwhile, in Britain, intelligence analysts are noticing a pattern. Commandos are disappearing. Official German reports claim they were killed in combat or shot while trying to escape. But the numbers don't add up. Ultra-intercepts of German communications mention executions. Witnesses report seeing prisoners murdered. Slowly, British intelligence pieces together the truth. Germany is systematically executing captured Special Forces soldiers. When the war ends, Allied investigators find copies of Hitler's order hidden in captured German files. They find execution reports. They find witnesses willing to testify. And they build a case. Not just for the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg, which will try the Nazi leadership, but for multiple subsequent trials that will prosecute the officers who implemented the order. The first to face justice is General Anton Dossler, the Italian commander who executed 15 Americans. In October 1945, he stands trial before an American military tribunal in Rome. His defense is simple: I was following orders. The Commando Order came from Hitler himself. I had no choice. The tribunal deliberates for 1 day. Their verdict: guilty of war crimes. Their reasoning: illegal orders must be disobeyed. Following an illegal order doesn't absolve responsibility. It makes you an accessory to murder. This is revolutionary legal thinking. For centuries, soldiers were expected to obey orders without question. But the tribunal establishes a new principle. There are some orders so illegal, so immoral, that a soldier has a duty to refuse them. On December 1, 1945, General Anton Dossler is tied to a post. A 12-man American firing squad shoots him. Photographers document everything, creating a visual record that justice, delayed by years, has finally arrived. But the real reckoning happens at Nuremberg. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, the man who signed the Commando Order, the man who distributed it to senior commanders, the man who enforced it, stands trial for war crimes. Prosecutors present Hitler's order with Keitel's signature. They present execution reports from Norway, France, Italy, Greece. They present testimony from German officers who reluctantly obeyed. From Allied soldiers who barely escaped. From families who never learned the truth about their missing sons. Keitel's defense mirrors Dossler's. He was following Hitler's orders. The tribunal rejects it. On October 1, 1946, Keitel is found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. He's sentenced to death by hanging. General Alfred Jodl, who helped draft and distribute the order, receives the same sentence. On October 16, 1946, both men are hanged. Keitel's final words are, "I call on God Almighty to have mercy on the German people." He asks for mercy for his country. But he showed no mercy to Joseph Houghton and the dozens of other commandos murdered under his orders. But here's what almost nobody knows. Here's the twist that changes everything. Not all German officers followed the Commando Order. Some refused. Quietly, carefully, at great personal risk, some German commanders found ways to protect captured Allied soldiers. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of U-boat forces, systematically ignored the order when submarines captured Allied sailors. He knew that executing prisoners would lead to retaliation against German POWs. His pragmatism saved lives. Other officers reclassified captured commandos as regular infantry to exempt them from the order. Some delayed transfers to the SD long enough for prisoners to be moved to regular POW camps where the order didn't apply. These acts of disobedience were dangerous. Discovery meant disgrace, court-martial, possibly execution. But some German officers valued honor more than obedience. Valued human life more than Hitler's hatred. One such officer was Generaloberst Alexander Lohr, commanding forces in the Balkans. When British commandos were captured in his sector, he received the standard order: execute them immediately. Instead he stalled, made excuses, claimed the prisoners were needed for prolonged intelligence interrogation, kept delaying until the prisoners could be transferred to regular POW camps. Not all survived, but some did. Because one man chose conscience over compliance. These acts of mercy rarely left documentary evidence. You don't write down that you're disobeying Hitler. But scattered reports and testimony from survivors suggest dozens, maybe hundreds of Allied soldiers were saved by German officers who quietly refused to murder prisoners. They didn't stop the Commando Order. But they limited its damage. They proved that even in the darkest moments, even in totalitarian militaries, individual moral choice still matters. And here's the final twist. The Commando Order, designed to terrorize Allied soldiers and stop commando raids, achieved the opposite. When word of the executions filtered back to Britain through intelligence channels and escaped prisoners, it didn't discourage volunteers. It increased them. British soldiers wanted to avenge their murdered comrades. Wanted to prove that terror tactics wouldn't work. Commando operations actually escalated after the order was issued. More raids. More targets. More damage to German infrastructure. Hitler's brutal policy backfired completely. It hardened Allied resolve. It gave British propaganda a powerful weapon. And it provided evidence for war crimes prosecutions that would help dismantle the Nazi leadership. Joseph Houghton and the others didn't die for nothing. Their murders helped convict their murderers. Their deaths contributed to legal principles that still protect soldiers today. So what does this forgotten story teach us? First, that rules in warfare aren't just moral niceties. They're practical necessities. The Geneva Convention exists because wars are easier to end when both sides trust that captured soldiers will be treated humanely. Hitler's Commando Order destroyed that trust. It meant Allied soldiers had no incentive to surrender. They'd fight to the death instead, making German casualties higher. It meant the Allies had moral justification for any action against Germany. It turned a military struggle into a moral crusade where compromise became impossible. Breaking the rules didn't make Germany stronger. It made Germany lose faster and more completely. Second, the story teaches us about the power and limitation of just following orders. The Nuremberg trials established that following illegal orders is itself a crime. But they also revealed something more subtle, that most people will follow illegal orders if the social pressure is strong enough. Field Marshal Keitel wasn't a monster. He was a bureaucrat who valued his career more than his conscience. The soldiers who shot Joseph Houghton weren't sadists. They were conscripts who valued obedience more than morality. Evil doesn't usually announce itself. It arrives as a policy memo, as a routine order, as something everyone else is doing so it must be okay. The real lesson isn't that we should refuse illegal orders. It's that we should recognize them before they become normalized. Third, this story is about the invisible heroes. We remember the commandos who died. We should. But we should also remember the German officers who refused to kill them. The names we'll never know. The men who risked everything to protect enemy prisoners because it was the right thing to do. They didn't stop the Holocaust. They didn't end the war. They just saved a few lives. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes, the small act of moral courage, the quiet refusal to participate in evil, is the most important thing a person can do. Not because it changes history, but because it preserves humanity when everything else is falling apart. So here's the question I want you to think about. If you were a German officer in 1942, would you have followed the Commando Order? It's easy to say no from the comfort of your home in 2025. But in 1942, refusing meant destroying your career. Maybe facing a firing squad yourself. It meant choosing between your conscience and your family. Between abstract principle and concrete survival. Most people followed the order. Some refused. What would you have done? Think about that. Really think about it. Because the test of character isn't what we do when it's easy. It's what we do when everything we value is on the line. And if this story shocked you, wait until you hear about the forgotten scientist who sabotaged his own invention to save enemy lives. About the Nazi officer who forged documents to rescue thousands from death camps. About the American pilot who broke every rule to protect enemy civilians. History is full of people who faced impossible moral choices. Some made the right decision. Some didn't. But all of them teach us something about courage, about conscience, and about the choices we hope we never have to make. That's a story for another time. But I think you'll want to hear it.